Can you still get a student loan? Or better yet, should you? We're going to talk about that at Smart Money. Welcome to Smart Money. I'm Julia Anderson here with my co-host Pat Boyle, and we have Jennifer Satellino. I always do this. Satellino, right? She is with the College Place, Oregon, as the director, and it's a counseling service for young people who are trying to figure out how to pay for higher education, basically. Is that fair to say, Jennifer?
That is fair to say, paying for education after high school.
Right, and it's free, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So it turns out after mortgage debt, student debt is the next highest consumer debt in the country. There's something like $1.6 trillion of student debt already out there. So Jennifer, what are the latest trends in student debt now that we've been through almost 2 years of COVID mandates and shutdowns? I'm wondering if more people are borrowing money for school, or have they backed off of it, or what's going on? What are the trends?
That's an excellent question. We're usually about 2 years behind in getting student loan data together. So the last year I have data for is the graduating class of 2019. So I can't yet tell you for sure what's going on with student loan trends. I can tell you that enrollment in higher education is down 7.8% since COVID started. So we are seeing an impact on students' behaviors. And in a few years, I'll be able to tell you whether that impacted their borrowing.
In the meantime, let me ask this. Julia, did you have a follow-up?
Well, just 7% is a big percentage. Do you know what that translates into in terms of numbers?
Oh, it's 7.8% across the board. At our community colleges, it's down 15%. So it is a really big chunk. I can't tell you what that means in terms of bodies across the country, but I can tell you that here in Oregon, a lot of our community colleges are really seeing a significant drop.
Boy, is it possible to get through college these days without accruing student debt? I mean, can you do it?
Yes. Yes, you can. It does mean making some sacrifices, however. but it is entirely possible. College isn't always like what we see in the movies. And, for students that want to have that traditional Animal House experience, or just trying to think of all of the college movies that I've seen, they're like the high school movies. They're unrealistic. If students are very serious about their studies, and they're willing to make sacrifices, then absolutely they can get by without taking on student loan debt. So
that might mean, and we had a prior guest on, and one of his tips was, if you're young and single, shack up with your mother. That's a way to stay debt-free. Your food costs, and you wouldn't be paying any room and board. So that was, I thought, a great tip from him. So are you seeing in the kids that are coming into your office looking for advice on how to get a higher education and how to pay for it? Are you seeing any new trends there in the kind of career choices they're making?
I am. And in fact, the nonprofit ECMC that sponsors the College Place Oregon has been doing some surveys with students since just before COVID started and continuing on. And what they're finding is that 50% of high school students today are open to something other than a four-year college experience. And I looked this up this morning. 74% think that career-based education makes sense. And so what that really translates to is often students are choosing shorter career technical education paths because of the uncertainty. They'd rather do a 9-month certificate or a 2-year degree and be able to have those job skills coming right out of the program than risk, a 4-year degree with all of the uncertainty that we're facing because of COVID. So I think it really has changed student behaviors and student attitudes towards education after high school.
Are things a little confusing now? There was a suspension of unpaid student debt because of COVID. The Biden administration is looking at something. What do people need to know about the status of their student debt?
That we have been in a holding pattern. We have not required any payments on federal student debt. That is coming to an end, and folks will need to start making payments on their outstanding federal student loans in early 2022. I know there's been a lot of talk about debt forgiveness. And earlier this week, the U.S. Department of Education disclosed that a lot of debt forgiveness has been happening. Students that have attended, institutions that have closed, that were less than honest in some cases about their job placement rates or the type of education that they were providing, students that have been permanently or totally disabled. There's been a lot of loan forgiveness that's already happened. I think this idea that everybody is just going to have their loans discharged might still be floating out there, and I hope it's not. But the bills are going to start coming due, as I said, in early 2022. We all need to prepare and make room in our budgets for that. If a student loan borrower is struggling, they need to contact their student loan servicer and talk about some of the options, such as an income-based repayment plan. But it's going to be time to start paying student loans again.
So the debt is not going away, basically, for most people.
For most people, right. For those in really specific situations, some debt relief has already occurred. But for the vast majority of us, we still have that same commitment to the student loan debt that we've already taken out.
Since your data is a little behind in terms of what the latest trends are, I'm going to go back to the point you made a little earlier about career choice. And something that I think I know is that plumbers these days, if they're working full time, can make as much as a physician or something like that. And so when you're sitting in high school thinking about, well, what do I want to do with my life? Maybe a choice is a technical school. And like you said, you get the training in 2 years instead of 4. You don't have the student debt. And over your career, you're going to have as much income as somebody who's got a medical degree after 15 more years of school and have maybe a couple $100,000 worth of debt. So there's a lot to think about in high school about what you want to be. Is that right?
That's true. I think any of us that have tried to get a plumber to come out to our homes recently, like in the past year, there's a long waiting list. It's really expensive. But I would say it's not an either or sort of thing. Students, for example, that maybe want to become physicians, there are a lot of baby steps that you can take along the way to get there. You can start out, if you started at Portland Community College has a gerontology certificate. So you can go earn that credential and start working. And then you can then use those credits to get to an associate's degree. That'll open up a couple of more career options for you. You could then become, a personal trainer or a life manager. And then you can go on and say, take those credits, transfer them over, earn a degree in kinesiology, and that's perfect then. If that's what you want to do, you've got some career options there. But if you then still want to be a physician, that degree then, that's been really practical for you and given you kind of a lot of choices along the way, that's the perfect preparation to get into medical school or to become a physician's assistant, get into that program. So I think that sometimes we feel that there's only one way to become a certain thing, such as a physician. But in actuality, there are a lot of different paths to take. So it's just really what fits the student, what fits their family, and what fits their finances at that time.
Let's talk interest rates. If they go up as expected, is that going to make student loan debt more expensive?
I am old enough that when I borrowed my student loans, my interest rate was 8%, which is huge now. If I didn't pay my loan off in the first 4 years, that interest rate bumped up to 10%. So I think our interest rates are still really, really low. I don't anticipate that they will go that high. They're tied to the 90-day Treasury bill rates. So, I mean, there's a chance the interest rates will go up, but even the last time they were a little bit higher, I just laugh when people are like, oh, this 5% is so high. And then I feel like, my grandmother, like, well, let me tell you, back in the day when I walked uphill both ways to go to college and I had an interest rate of
in the
5%.
snow.
So, yeah, in the snow with no shoes, who knows? But it's always relative. I think there's always going to be a demand for education after high school. And I think that student loans are always going to be a vehicle that's there if students and families need them. But even at the height of huge interest rates and inflation, our student loan rates were much, much less than what even mortgage rates were in the early 80s. So I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on students. And that's my personal opinion as somebody who has been willing to pay quite a bit for a student loan during a high interest era in the past. And I've successfully paid them, so it didn't affect my life too hard. Well, it affected my life when I was paying them off, but I was able to pay them off, so it was good.
Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations on that. I know there are some delinquent loans out there. I want to talk for a minute about 529 tax deferred programs that families, and I don't think you even have to be a family member to open a 529 for a budding student. Some people start them as early as when their children are 5 years old. The idea is you put money into the 529, it grows over time, and then it comes out when it's needed to help pay for higher education. So what's your view on 529s? Are they still a good vehicle for helping students pay for education?
I'm a huge believer in the 529s. I currently have 2 daughters in college, and so all the funding that we scrimped and saved over the years and put into the 529 for both of them is really paying off. My godson had a baby this summer, so I'm now a fairy godmother. And I will tell you that even before Luca was born, I was encouraging him to open up a 529 so that not only could he and his spouse save, but grandparents and, godmothers could as well. Because the beneficiary of a 529 can change, I encouraged my godson to open the 529 and with himself as the beneficiary so that we could get a jump start on actually contributing to the plan before the baby was even born. I am a big fan of 529s if families have the capability of saving. And I will also note that a few years ago, the Oregon bottle drop accounts, so when you take your bottles to the redemption centers or you put them in the green bags, you can now link those bottle accounts to your Oregon college savings plans. It's a really, really wonderful way to just show that every little bit counts. For families that are lower income, and so where saving in a 529 might feel like a real struggle, for those truly low income families, here in Oregon, we have several IDAs, or individual development accounts, that match savings when low income families put money aside to help pay for education. So there's a lot of different ways to save, but for your average middle income, middle class, middle of the road family, here in Oregon, I really do love the 529 plans.
Well, I love hearing about the pop can money going to the college education. That's just awesome. Are there any other general saving and paying for college tips that you can give young people?
I would say you're going to pay for college and you choose when you're going to pay for it. So if you are a young person right now and you're in middle school or high school and you're getting some birthday money and your first thought is I'm going to go to Dutch Bros and spend $5 on the big foofy drink, remember that what you save now towards your education is money that you don't have to pay back while you're in college. I mean, it's money in your pocket then. Or if you weren't able to save, when you get to college, you're borrowing money, that's money you're going to pay later. So you kind of get to choose when you're going to make that sacrifice. So because at some point, if you can't save now, and if you can't pay out of cash while you're in college or education after high school, and you take a loan, then you're going to be paying for it once you're out of school. So it's you have more control over the timing of when you pay the earlier you start to save. And it doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. It could just start with, $5. Just tell yourself that that money is set aside for your education and make that investment in yourself.
We've talked about trends in education, higher education, and you mentioned the decline in enrollment in community colleges. And I think universities are also maybe alarmed about that same trend. And we've also talked a little bit about career choices and how maybe kids are getting a little smarter about not taking on giant amounts of student debt before they really get where they want to go with their career. So I'm wondering, I'm going to go back to the 529 thing again. When the money comes out of a 529, is it taxable? I mean, does anybody have to pay taxes on that money?
So the money that goes into a 529 is after-tax money. So it's like me putting money into my savings account. When the funds come out of the 529, as long as they are used for allowable education expenses, there's no tax event. Does that make sense?
Great.
So it's coming out.
Thank you.
The one thing I would say, and the plug I'm going to give for the Oregon College Savings Plan, and I don't work for them, but I do love them, is that they make it really easy for a parent or a grandparent or a next door neighbor to open up a 529 and then allow others who aren't on the account to make donations into the account. And here in Oregon, up to a certain point, your donations can help reduce your tax burden. So, and I'm not an accountant, but if I had opened up an Oregon College Savings Plan for my fairy godson, my sister could have contributed to it. And since we're both Oregonians, if I had opened that up through the Oregon College Savings Plan, she could reaped some tax benefits from it despite not owning that account. So here in Oregon, we make it really easy to make savings for college, like really a family or community affair.
Well, you may have answered my last question that we had for you, and that's what's the biggest tip for parents for saving for college? And it sounds like that's the one, huh?
I love that. But I would also just say be open to anything. So be open to your child going to community college for a year or two. One of my daughters, did 90 credits, well, more than 90 credits at Portland Community College before transferring. And it was the best thing that ever happened to her. It was what she needed at the time. My other daughter went right to a 4-year college. So just listen to your kids, understand what they want, know that not everybody has that traditional college path of, going to college in New England in the fall with the leaves and fraternities and sororities and the, what else do they always have a road trip in there somewhere. But college is really where your students have a chance to start making their adult decisions. So be open to everything. Expose your kids to all sorts of different things wherever you are. If they're like, wow, I really want to drive a fire truck, you can start talking about the steps it takes to become a firefighter. So first you have to learn how to drive. Then you might need to learn how to drive a truck. Then you might need to learn how to drive a fire truck. Then there's also other training that happens in there. So really start talking about different careers and occupations and the training that goes into them. And if you don't know, it's a fun thing to find out together. So, but yes, and always save. I will say always save. But even before your kids are born, you can save. Grandparents, it's a fun thing.
Well, you have given us some great advice, and could I hire you to talk to my grandson who's 17 in Seattle? Maybe there's a way we could work it out so you talk to him, because you are a great counselor, obviously.
I was going to say, everything I do is free of charge. You don't have to hire me. Just we'll get
okay. Well,
grandson and
all
I.
right. Well, we're going to talk about that. So I want to be sure I have your title correctly. It's Ellen Satellino, and what is your title?
It's Jennifer Satellino, and I am the director of ECMC.
Ellen was my other guest. Sorry.
Ellen was before, but she's young and cute, so if you want to confuse me with Ellen, I will take that. So She has very good hair. So yeah, I'm Jen Zadolino. I'm the director of ECMC, the College Place, Oregon. I work with students and families of any age. So you could be, the high school student, or you could be an adult that's looking at making a change as a result of COVID or other things going on in your life. And my job is to really help you sort through the possibilities, make sure that you've got all the paperwork together, and that you're making a really informed choice. And everything that we do at ECMC, the College Place, is free of charge. So feel free to get in touch with me, and I will help to the best of my ability.
Super. And there is a phone number, right?
With COVID, it's better right now to email me. I haven't been in my office since March of 2020. And
wow,
in theory, my office number is forwarding to my cell phone, but in practice, that's not always happening. So I would say the best way to get me right now is to use my email, which is JSATALINO@ecmc.org.
Great, thank you. We've been talking to Jennifer Zadolino at the College Place, and your office is in a community college area, but as you say, you're working from home. So today we had a chance to kind of review where we are with student debt and what kinds of ideas we can share with our family and young people about how to plan for college. So Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us on Smart Money.
So happy to be here, and good luck, and I will chat with your grandson anytime you'd like.
Cool.
For more information, go to my website at 60andsingle.com.